Tested reading this morning is Psalm 62, verses 1 through 8. Reading the Pew Bible or Bible. My soul finds rest in God alone. My salvation comes from Him. He alone is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will never be shaken. How long will you assault a man? Would all be thrown down, this leaning wall, this tottering fence? They fully intend to topple him from his lofty place. They take delight in lies. With their mouths they bless, but in their hearts they curse. Find rest, O my soul, in God alone. My hope comes from Him. He alone is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. My salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. Trust in Him at all times, O people. Pour out your hearts to Him, for God is our refuge. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thank you. which is John chapter 10, verses 1 through 10. John chapter 10, verses 1 through 10. In which Jesus says, I tell you the truth, the man, and I would add woman or man, who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The man who enters by the gate is the shepherd of his sheep. The watchman opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. They will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Jesus used this figure of speech, but they did not understand what he was telling them. Therefore Jesus said again, I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. All who ever came before me were thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. He or she will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. The word of the Lord. Now, whether Reverend McLeod wants to call it predestination or Reverend Kerr prevenient grace, I believe that the Lord has been preparing me to be in a Presbyterian church. I attended my first session meeting. We attended our first session meeting. Enough said about that. I spent 7 formational years at Pittsburgh Theological Seminary. I want you to know that during my time there was controversy and there was debates, and it wasn't over anything specifically biblical. It wasn't over a social concern. It was over a gate. Who knew church people would fight over things that really didn't matter, right? That's a joke. It was a gate. You see, if you've ever been to Pittsburgh Seminary, there is a huge black gate or a fence that goes around it. Now, those of the people who were in favor of the gate, they said it was a visible sign of protection. It made us feel safe. It ensured that those of us who were inside the gate knew we were inside the gate. And then there were those young whippersnappers like Josh, those zealous, those who wanted to reach out to the community. And they said, no. This gate is a visible sign of division from the community. It makes those outside the gate feel excluded. And the reality was, others outside of the gate really had no clue what was inside of the gate. I know of another church that has a no trespassing sign on the wall in front of their church, and it actually has the criminal code. How many of us want people to trespass, right? We want people in church, but this church has a sign that says no trespassing. I know of one other church that has a barbed wire fence around its parking lot. So think about this. Theologically, what are our buildings or what are our fences saying about us? There was a rock group called Telsa. Brother George probably knows that one. I'm not too familiar. But Telsa has a song called Signs, and it goes like this. And the sign says, anybody caught trespassing will be shot on sight. So I jumped the fence and I yelled at the house, what gives you the right to put up a fence and keep me out or keep Mother Nature in? If God were here, he'd tell it to your face, man, you're some kind of sinner. And the chorus goes like this, signs, everywhere signs, blocking up the scenery, breaking up my mind. Do this, don't do that, can't you read the sign? So my question to you good folk at Homestead Praise is, what are the signs that people read when they come to us? What are the signs or the gate that is breaking up the scenery and breaking up our minds? John 10, Jesus says, very truly I tell you Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in some other way, is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. And see, church, here is an in-house Jewish conflict between Jesus and the Pharisees. Did you ever notice that it was usually the most religious Jesus had a problem with? And the Pharisees were the supposed shepherds of Israel. And the analogy is drawn from the everyday life in ancient Judaism. There were people, the people of God were seen as the sheep, and they would journey across the land, and they would seek good pasture. If you know anything about sheep, which I don't know much, luckily, they're not the smartest animals, and I'm sure if you look at some of the things we do, we're not the smartest animals, and sheep are dependent, and sheep always need to be led. So the idea that the religious leaders of Israel were to be the shepherds. They were to guide and lead the sheep. They were to keep them from danger. And the spiritual application is this, that the shepherds were to provide solid instruction to the people, guiding them in the ways of God, and actually guiding them to God. And the sheep pen was the gathering of the sheep, was the covenant community. It was those who were in right relationship with the God of Israel. But then comes Brother Jesus, who tells them that the only way the sheep can enter the covenant community is through the gate. They can't climb over a wall. And if that wasn't disturbing enough, Jesus says that the one who initially enters the gate is the shepherd. How many know that as a leader, you cannot expect others to go where you won't go yourself? I had a not a debate, but a conversation with someone before where they told me that their method of parenting is they told their son, don't do as I do, but do as I say. I thought about that. Well, I'm like, well, if you can't even do what you say, why the heck should your son? Jesus says that the gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice, and he calls his own by name, and then he leads them out, and he has brought out all of his own. Then he goes on ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. Jesus says that the gatekeeper opens the gate for the shepherd. The gatekeeper is Father God. Opens the gate for the shepherd. Then the shepherd comes in, and then the shepherd, who is Jesus, calls them by name. And actually, if you are a shepherd in the ancient way, and I'm sure it's the same today, that some shepherds would actually have names for their sheep. And you may say, man, that's stupid. We all name our animals, right? Puffy, whatever our dog's name is, right? It's the same way these shepherds would with their sheep. And he would call them over and over and over again, and the sheep would begin to know the shepherd's voice. I had a conversation with a mentor of mine before in the faith, and I asked the ultimate question, how do we know we hear God's voice? Anyone ever asked that before? And very easily, she wasn't shaken by that. She looked at me and she says, Keith, how do you know my voice? Well, I've known you for 3 years and we've talked almost daily at times. And she said, it's the same way with God. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. And what I love about this is what is necessary to understand about sheep and shepherds is that they never stayed in one place. They traveled. In fact, their lives depended on it. That if the sheep would stay in one place, they would eat up all the grass, so they had to graze and go find more to live. And then Jesus says they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Jesus used this figure of speech, but the Pharisees didn't understand what he was telling them. So Jesus says that they will never follow a stranger's voice because they don't recognize that voice. But church, I got to be honest, I think for many of us, at least in the North American church, the opposite is happening today. We have forgot, or we have never truly heard the voice of the shepherd. And I have a confession as a mainline leader in the mainline denomination. I don't think that we have trained our people to hear the voice of God for themselves. Many of our lives have nothing to do with the biblical story. Our prayers have more to do with our convenience than they do with listening. Much of our theology denies the fact that God still speaks through the Spirit. Just not in the Scriptures, but how many know that I believe God speaks to the human heart and to the very spirit within us? How many times have you felt a nudging, a strong impression, a dream or a vision, or maybe one day you were reading the Bible and a certain scripture just popped out and grabbed your attention, and then we figured it was probably the caffeine, and we never asked, is it you, Lord? If we don't know the voice of God, how do we know the one we follow? Therefore Jesus said again, I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate, and whoever enters through me will be saved. You see, church, now Jesus is getting very personal. He's just not saying he is the true shepherd. We're going to talk about that next week. He's saying that he is the very gate, or as the New Interpreter's Bible commentary says, he is the authorized access into the covenant community. And as the true meaning of belonging to this community is we experience salvation. In sheep, anyone here speak sheep? In sheep terms, Jesus was the entry point to the place of security and protection. He was the shepherd, and this is what shepherds used to do. They would lay across the entrance of the sheepfold, the gate, and they would keep the sheep from wandering off, and they would keep intruders from coming in. Jesus is the place where everything the sheep needed was provided. He was their security. He was their pasture. In Jesus, Psalm 23 is fulfilled. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores, refreshes my soul. Or as Eugene Peterson's message says, God my shepherd, I don't need a thing. But then verse 9 warns us that the thief comes only to steal, to kill, and destroy. In church, I believe we need to come to terms with something. That there are forces around us that don't want this church or any church to succeed. That there are forces around us that seek to kill us, destroy us, to steal our joy. And many times, these forces are given permission by us to use us. Listen to what James 3 says. If you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but it is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For where there are envy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder in every evil practice. Again, the message says this: whenever you're trying to look better than others or get the better of others, things just fall apart and everything and everyone ends up at each other's throats. Jesus says, I am the gate, and whoever enters through me will be saved. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. But here's the thing. This abundant life, this full life Jesus is talking about, is just not about life in the sheep pen. How many know the honeymoon gets over very quickly? The grass gets all eaten up. Other sheep begin to smell, because of course it's not us, right? It's the other sheep. And the reality of this is our joy, our abundance is found in the fact that we are called to leave the pen and be sent out into the world. We are called to go out and search for the other sheep. To find those broken, lost souls who need to find the gate. The sheep that are always wandering around, lost and in danger. I want to share with you a poem that was written by a man named Sam Shoemaker. Sam Shoemaker helped to actually write and draft the original 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. He was an Episcopal priest. And he came up with this poem called I Stand by the Door. And for sake of argument, let's say it's called I Stand by the Gate. I stand by the door. I neither go too far in nor stay too far out. Because you see, this door is the most important door in the world. It is the door through which people walk in when they find God. There's no use in me going way inside and staying there when there are so many outside as they as much as I. They crave to know where this door is. It is only the wall where a door ought to be that people usually find. They creep along the wall like blind people. They have outstretched arms, groping hands, feeling for a door or a gate, knowing there must be a door, yet they never find it. So I stand by the door. The most tremendous thing in the world is for people to find that door, that gate, that door to God. The most important thing any person can do is to take a hold of one of those groping lost hands and put it on the latch, and then the latch clicks and it opens to the person's own touch. Because you see, people die outside that door or gate as a starving beggar dies on a cold night in a cold city in the dead of winter. They die for what is within their very grasp. You see, they live on the other side of it. They live because they have not found it. Nothing else matters compared to helping them find that door and open it and walk in it and find Him. So I stand by the door. And then He says to us good church folk, go in, great saints, go all the way in, go down into the cellars, way up into the spacious attics, and the vast roomy house where God is. Go into the deepest of the hidden casements, of withdrawal, of silence, of sainthood. Some must inhabit those inner rooms and know the depths and the heights of God, and call out to the rest of us outside, how wonderful it is in here. Sometimes I take a deeper look in. Sometimes I venture in a little farther, but my place seems closer to the opening, so I stand by the door. There's another reason I stand by the door. Because some people get partway in and they become afraid, lest God and zeal for His house consume them. You see, God is so very great, and He asks all of us, and these people, they feel a cosmic claustrophobia, and they want to get out. Let me out, they cry. And the people way inside only terrify them more. You see, somebody must be by the door to tell those inside that they are spoiled for the old life. They have seen too much. You see, one taste of God, and nothing but God will do anymore. You see, somebody must be watching for the frightened who seek to sneak out just where they came in, to tell them how much better it is inside the gate or door. But the people too far in do not see how near these are to leaving, preoccupied with the wonder of it all. Somebody must watch for those who have entered the door but would like to run away. So for them too, I stand by the door. I admire the people who go way in, but I wish they would not forget how it was before they got in. Then they would be able to help the people who have not yet even found the door, or the people who want to run away from God, who could go in too deeply and stay too long and forget that there's people outside the door. As for me, I shall take my old accustomed place, near enough to God to hear Him and know He is there, but not so far from people that I don't hear them. And remember, they are out there too. We're outside the door, thousands of them, millions of them, but more important for me, one of them, 2 of them, 10 of them, whose hands I intended to put on the latch. So I stand by the door and I wait for those who seek it. I'd rather be a doorkeeper or a gatekeeper. So I stand by the gate. Church, in the words of the message, by being in relationship with Jesus, we can live each day. We can be sent to the world and believe that all we need will be provided so that all of His sheep can say, God is my shepherd. I don't need a thing. May it be so. May it be so.